Hey, and welcome to our work together. We're going to be talking about preaching through the book of James over the next few months, and I want to welcome you to this class. My name is James Jones, and I'm a minister in the United States and love to teach from the Bible and have had a good long relationship with Central Africa Christian College. I'm the one that churches send the support to, and then I forward it on to the college, and been to the college a couple times and just love being there, love being with students, love being with the staff there as well. So I'm just thankful to be able to spend some time with you. Just a little note, I am married, have two daughters, and again, like I said, I've ministered in churches in the United States. Right now I'm in Illinois and have ministered down in Florida, and I'm from Georgia, which is in the South. And anyway, just glad to be part of this. And what I want to do in this lecture is just go over what the course is going to look like. So you should have received the course outline, and we're going to go through some of the main points of that and spend a little time. And then, as always, I want you to ask questions. We'll have a WhatsApp group. We'll get to that in a minute. And that is the place for us to talk about things that maybe you don't understand. We'll be having a lot of conversation about the book of James there, but that's the place for you to ask questions anytime you have them. And go ahead, because if you're thinking about it, there's probably somebody else who's asking the same question. So let's get started. Let me share my screen here. So we are thinking about the book of James over the next few weeks, and we're thinking also about how we preach through that, and that's a big part of what I want us to do over the next few weeks. So we're thinking about biblical preaching. And we need to think about what that means. That means that we use a text from Scripture, and our lesson comes from that text. And our goal is to find out, what does that text actually mean? And what did it mean in the first century? If it's an Old Testament text, what did it mean before that? But in the New Testament, where we'll be, what did it mean in the first century? And then what does it mean for us today? What are the applications of that text for us? So we'll be doing both of those things, thinking about what it meant originally and what it means to us. So we're going to do a careful study of line by line, every verse of the book of James. So by the time we're done, you will have been through the book of James very carefully, but along the way, we'll also be talking about some topics related to preaching. So here's what we're going to do. All right, here are the assignments that you're going to have over the next few weeks. Let's just keep going here. And then there's my contact information. It says D-Min, that's Doctor of Ministry. You don't have to call me Dr. Jones. You can call me Professor or Mr. Jones, Pastor, Doc. I've gotten all that, and all that's fine. You see my email. It's also in the course description. And then my phone number, which we'll use in WhatsApp. Now, here's our course assignments. Let's lay it out. The first thing we're going to do, besides our lectures, is to do a devotional reading of the English text of the book of James. Now, if you look in that course outline, you'll see a schedule of that. And I'm going to go back. It's on page, let's see if I can get to it. It is on page 3 of that course outline. And so we'll spend most of September talking about that. And just watch those dates, and I'll send out some reminders, and we'll say I want to create a thread for us to talk about, say, James 1, verse 1, James 1, 2 through 4. And I'll give you some prompts, but I also want you to sort of think through what matters to you, the questions that you have, the insights that you have. And this is a way for us to share ideas. This is a way for us to get to know one another. I wish I was there with you on campus, but unfortunately, that can't happen this time, but this is a way for us to get to know one another. And so I'll ask some questions, introductory questions, but also we'll talk about the book as well. So I expect everyone to participate all the way through. So you need to respond on each text that we talk about. And that's 15% of your grade. And we'll be done with that by the end of September. And then you're going to do some sermon outlines. Now, we'll talk a little bit about what a sermon outline looks like. So what I need for you to do is, as we're reading through the book of James, choose 3 texts that you want to give a sermon outline on, all right? And what that should include, it should probably be maybe 2 pages, all right? It's going to include your sermon title. It's going to include your text for the sermon. So what verses in James are you looking at? All these should come from the book of James. Your main idea, we'll talk about what that means. or proposition. I think that's a word that we sometimes use. I sometimes call it the bottom line. What's the main point, okay? And then what's your introduction? 2-3 sentences. Each of the main points. Sometimes we do one main point, sometimes we do more. And then major subpoints. So you may have 3 main points and 2 or 3 subpoints under each one. Those should be full sentences. And then, do you have any illustrations, any stories you want to tell, any facts you want to give, some statistics, anything like that, illustration, and then your conclusion, 2 or 3 sentences for that as well. So be sure you give me all of those things. Now, every time you do one of these sermon outlines, look down that list and make sure I got everything that's listed there, because I want you to be successful in that. Plus, I want you to be able to preach that if the time comes. If you have an opportunity to teach, I want you to be ready because you got that sermon outline. Okay, so that will be due, let's see, October 26th. And then we'll have a sermon manuscript due on November 9th. Now, what does that mean? That means I want you to write out every single word you would say if you delivered this message. So take one of those sermon outlines. You wrote 3 sermon outlines. Take one of those, and you're going to create a sermon manuscript as if you had to preach it the next Sunday. And I want every single word that you would say in that sermon. And I think it's a good discipline. We'll talk about why I do. And I do this every week. For every message I give, I write the whole thing out. Now, I may not preach it word for word, but that gets me a full, comprehensive idea of everything I want to say. So that will be your next assignment. It's due November 9th, 20% of your grade. So that one's pretty important. There will be a midterm the week of October 12th, and you'll have some essay questions, and that'll be based on class lectures. Okay, so be sure you're watching the class lectures. And then the final exam will be the final week of the course, due by December 4th. And what I want there is a recording of you preaching. Now, I want you to take that manuscript. You don't have to read it for word, but be prepared to preach from that manuscript. A video would be great, but I know for some folks, if you're not on campus, don't have great internet connection, audio recording is the best you can do, and that's fine. But either an audio or a video so that I get an opportunity to actually see you preach the message. Okay, so those are your assignments. Now, we'll go over that as we go through the semester, and but if you do have questions and you don't know what I'm talking about, please, as we get the class started, send us a message for the whole group so that everyone sees the answer, and I'll do my very best to explain just what you need to do. We don't want any confusion on assignments because, again, I want you to be successful, and more than that, I want to see you prepared to do ministry very, very well. Okay, how are we going to complete the course? This is what we're going to do. First thing that's going to happen is probably the dean or someone in the office is going to form us a WhatsApp group with me and everyone else in the class. I imagine the dean will put himself in that group as well. He usually does when we do this. And that'll give you an opportunity to communicate with me as a group. You are free to message me individually. That's fine as well. But most of our conversation will take place in the group lots of times because you have the same questions. And if we can just answer it once, that makes it a whole lot easier. So be looking for that, and then be sure you're checking WhatsApp to find out what's going on in that group conversation, because there'll be a lot over the next few weeks. That'll be our primary means of communicating with one another. Now, the lectures for the course, that will all take place by YouTube. You know that because this lecture itself is on YouTube. So there's a playlist there. I'll try to send out links each week for the courses that you should be watching. Be sure you're keeping up with the lectures because that is my primary way of teaching you. So watch those lectures. It'll be super important. Now, one thing you'll notice is some of them will look slightly different. I sometimes teach a class on preaching through Colossians, but the dean asked me to teach this class, which I taught in person before on campus. So I'm using some of the lectures for the Colossians class because those are the ones on preaching. So everything from James will be these new lectures, but I am pulling in some older lectures that are about preaching and my approach to preaching. So some of them will look slightly different, but that's exactly still what you're supposed to be watching. So make sure you're keeping up with the video lectures. You see a schedule in your course outline for the lectures that you should be watching along the way. You can submit your assignments either by WhatsApp as an attachment or by email as an attachment. Word document is good. If you have to, you can just put the text in your message. If that's if you have connection problems or computer problems, I will work with you. So just let me know what's going on. And then just again note the schedule of the course outline in the course description. So remember that we'll be doing that devotion, not devotion, but we'll be doing that devotional reading, I should say, of the book of James by WhatsApp. And our very first text will be James 1, verse 1, and that will begin on the week of September the 2nd. And that'll be the first thing, the first assignment that you have as we get started, beyond just watching the lectures. And this, of course, is the first one, so you're making good progress already. I always want to remember that we're working cross-culturally, right? I live in America. I'm born there. It's part of my culture. I've been to Zimbabwe a couple times, but I am by no means an expert on Zimbabwean culture. So probably somewhere along the way, I'll say something that doesn't make sense because it makes sense in my culture and not yours. So that's one of those times when please ask me what I mean. There have been a couple times when I was preaching in Zimbabwe and I used a phrase that makes perfect sense in the U.S. and doesn't mean anything to anybody in Zimbabwe. And so I had to change. So let me know. Don't be afraid of that. And hopefully we will learn from each other, right? I know some very, very strong church leaders from Zimbabwe and have tremendous respect from them, and I've learned from them. So it's my hope that we learn from each other. And by learning cross-culturally, we get closer to the gospel because the gospel speaks into all cultures. So just remember that we'll probably have some things that we don't understand from each other just because even though we both speak English, we'll still struggle a little bit with making sense of some of that. So a few parting notes before we finish up. Note that I've given you an outline of the letter. I think sometimes having an outline of a New Testament book, Old Testament book, can help us sort of get handles on the way that the authors organize material. So take a look at that. You'll see that on page 3 of the course outline, and we'll follow that basically. I mean, that will form the basis for the lectures as we go along. And then after that, page 4 is the schedule of lectures. There are 2 lectures for each week in the semester. Most of the time, they're certainly not more than an hour, a lot of times less, so it's manageable. You shouldn't have a whole lot of trouble making time to watch that, couple hours worth of lectures each week. Again, be sure you're keeping up with that because that will be the most important way for me to give you any kind of information about the book. And then you see some suggested resources. And I know that I don't have access to all these all the time, and you don't either, but I just wanted to give you a list of things that if you can get your hands on at some point, these are the things that are the most helpful as we look at the book of James. I've listed, I think, the best commentaries that are out there, and then also some great studies of New Testament studies, textbooks or dictionaries that I think are really good as well, and then a few things on preaching. I think the preaching piece of this class is the one where culture's the most different, right? Because preaching is not the same in every culture. So I want to be sensitive to that. I will show you what I do, but as we've said, I live in a different culture than you do, and I try to be sensitive to that as we go along because I know that your preaching environment is different from mine. So again, I hope I can learn from you, and I hope there's some things that you can learn from me, and we'll just do great work together. So it's time to get started. The very next lecture will get us right into the the heart of what we're going to talk about this semester. We'll be talking about the book of James, and we'll be talking about preaching. So this first week of the course, this lecture is number 1, and this is fairly brief. Then you'll watch an introduction to preaching, and that comes from those older lectures. And then the second week of the course, we're jumping right into the book of James, and we'll think about the introductory issues and then the first few verses of the book of James, and that's where we'll go in the first couple of weeks. I will look forward to getting acquainted with you in our WhatsApp group and hearing about you and hearing about your ministries, and I hope you'll do the same, and I hope that we develop a friendship and community as we go along. Looking forward to it, and I'll be praying for each one of you as you do this work. I'll be praying that you do great work. All right, I'll talk to you later.